Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about how to systematize a business. And this episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Charles Bender. Hi, Charles.
Hi.
So good to have you on this podcast.
I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And you are a serial entrepreneur. As you said in your bio, you're a father, a husband for over 30 years now, right?
Coming up, 30 years in April, actually.
30 years in April. Well, this is an evergreen episode. So whenever April is, it's going to always be your anniversary.
Got it.
But 30 years, that's fantastic. That's definitely an accomplishment. You know, we just celebrated our 26th. So definitely that's well done. And you're very involved with the Entrepreneurs Organization in terms of being on the regional board, right? And the regional, what was the exact title?
So I'm the regional chair currently of the U.S. West. So the U.S. West region, there's 10 regions of EO, and I'm the member leader of this particular region. And I have a council of about 20 people who work with me to deliver value for our chapters in the region, and our members.
Wow. And you have two companies, so it's kind of like you have a lot of full-time jobs here, but you manage.
Yes, and I have great teams.
That's right. So we're going to talk about it, like how can you be that busy but still have that many teams? I mean, like using the teams, like how can you be that busy, or I wouldn't say busy, but productive, right? And still be able to have fun, enjoy life, have a family, and we're going to talk about your secret on how you do that.
Okay, we're in.
We're in. Okay, good. So before we start, I want to give a big shout out to David Nielsen that introduced us. You were on his podcast as well. Mm-hmm. And then David was on my podcast. And David talked all about how we're actually creating this global workforce, right? And it's a great, great episode, a lot of information there. So I'm going to include it in the show notes. And big shout out to David. So thank you, David, for the introduction.
He is definitely one of the smartest guys I know, and also a lovely human being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. All right, Charles, let's dive into it. How did you start your entrepreneurial career?
Shining shoes. Like I think my first role was as an entrepreneur was shining shoes when I was 12 years old. So it's kind of interesting. I grew up in a pretty modest household. We struggled financially a lot growing up. So for me, Shining Shoes was this place where I could make my own money and do my own things. And ironically, this is in the late 70s, early 80s. So, but I was a hustler. I got a shoe shine box and some polish and some cloths and a brush and went out and beat down the door. So I grew up in this place called Prescott, Arizona. I don't know if you're familiar with Arizona. But it's a traditional old West town, right? There's this downtown courthouse, this square, and then a bunch of businesses around the square. And what Prescott's really known for is Whiskey Row, which is basically this whole row of bars right across from the courthouse, right? So when I was a kid, I used to run in the front door, go out the back door, in the back door, out the front door, and zigzag through all the bars to shine cowboys' boots. Then I would hit the bar, hit the police station, or not the bar, the courthouse, the police station, all the lawyers. And by noon, I had pocketed $60, $100, and I went to play video games in the afternoon. That was my first business. But I learned early that if you want to actually have something that's your own, you got to go out and hustle for it. So it's not probably the direction you would go, but that was my first business.
No, it's amazing because, I started my own business when I was, I think 13 or 14, and it was tutoring the neighbors' kids. I was very good at it, and it was, you have to hustle, but it became a great business. It became a great way of me making my own money and support and then I can do whatever I want. So
Freedom.
It's like, and I think, I talked to many, many, many entrepreneurs, and a lot of them started at a young age. You don't just wait for somebody to give you money. You go and create it, right? You make something, so you get paid for it. So
exactly. And I think it scales. The simplicity of it. Entrepreneurship has become really simple for me over the years. I really think of there's an inflection point of wealth, and it really comes down to what's the size of the problem that you're trying to solve, and what's the number of people who have that problem. And if it's a big problem you're solving for billions of people, that's how billionaires are created. But there are a lot of millionaires by creating a good sized problem for 1,000 people. Or, you know what I mean? So it's, I always talk when I coach entrepreneurs or young people starting off in life, just think about the problem and the number of people who have it, and then go fix it for them. And if you do that, you're going to have a pretty good life. You can build a good life. So I think we can oftentimes make things way more complex than they need to be, but solve problems, help lots of people. The more people you help, the more successful you are. It's pretty simple.
Absolutely true. It's so true.
Yeah.
So true. So your current businesses. So let's continue with the journey. So
okay.
The shoe shining. I love that story. And then what happened?
So I went in the military. Got out of the service. Did my 8 years in the United States Navy. Go Navy. Navy beat Army every year. That's my. But and got out and got into my first EO qualifying business, which is dating services. So I actually was a national franchisor in the dating business. Built offices all over the United States. Old school dating. So we didn't have computers. We didn't have the internet. We were basically doing saturation mailing, direct mail in all of our markets, and then we'd interview every single person, make sure that they were a good quality person, do a background check on them, make sure they were somebody who was actually looking for an actual relationship, was interested in having somebody in their life as opposed to a transactional weekend, we'll call it, and then match them together. So did that. That was my first EO qualifying business.
Matchmaker. I love it.
Exactly. It was really interesting business. Learned a lot about people. Learned a lot about what people really want out of a mate and a partner. And it was a lot of fun. Did that business and then started what is now my current couple businesses. Back in early 2000, 2002, 2003, I moved to the country, couldn't get high-speed internet at my house. Had built a whole ERP and CRM solution using web technology, which was pretty early for my dating business, and needed to get better internet at my house. So I started a company that provides high-speed internet to myself. It really started with I needed to get internet. It was super expensive. So I figured if I could, I looked for ways that I could offset my costs to get it to my house by sharing it with my neighbors. And that's really how Skynet Broadband started, which was my ISP. Still have it, still growing. We're 20 years this year is our 20th official anniversary.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. And then we were providing rural broadband to high-speed internet to rural parts of the Washington state, basically. And what we quickly found out, the technology was in its infancy at the time. And in a rural community, if you know anything about technology, they pretty much think you know everything about technology, right? So pretty soon everybody's bringing their computers for us to fix them. The businesses need help with their networking, their servers. They don't have anybody who can help them out with that stuff. So we started doing it. And I woke up in 2005, 2006 and had $1 million business unit that was just doing IT services in a break-fix way for our existing customers. But their needs were very different than the needs of my ISP, was a much more complex business, and I needed to basically split it off. So we spun it off and into another brand called Biz IT Pros, which was basically we were an Inc. 5000 fastest growing company, did all kinds of cool stuff with that. And then in 2017, I partnered with another managed services provider. And this will go back to my secret of how I do all those things you were talking about earlier. And partnered, merged those two companies together, and now it's Attentus Technologies is what the IT company is. And we provide outsourced IT for our customers.
That's fantastic. Okay, Charles, what's the secret? Like, let's go over like what we have entrepreneurs that are listening to us right now.
Yeah.
Their companies are fast growing companies. They're lacking consistency, or they want to know how to improve their companies. That's why they are listening to this podcast. Let's take a look at, let's say the entrepreneurs is like they grew their company, it's scaled, it's grew fast, but it's still feeling like they are enslaved to the companies, in terms of like they don't have the freedom, they don't have the ability to do what they want, to have the lifestyle that they want. And that's why they started the company. Yes, they are hustlers, they like to work hard. It's not like they want to just play golf all day. Maybe they do, but they're not there at that point of like, this is why they really became entrepreneurs. So they can't really, you use the word enjoy life, right? So
yeah.
what would you say are your top points or advice that you can give to those people?
So be super clear why you're doing what you're doing. I think honestly, a lot of people stumble into entrepreneurship. I think there's some stumblers. I think there's some people who are intentional, where they go into the business with a clear exit strategy. I want to grow it as fast as I can for 5 years and want to sell it. And then I want to figure out what my next thing is. There are people who go into entrepreneurship because they really don't have any other skills. They're unemployable. That would have been me. There's nobody I could work for who's smarter than I am. I'm just saying that's my problem. It's not true, but it is my problem.
One thing is recognizing it. So well done recognizing it, right? I mean, that's one thing that is definitely, you got to recognize the problem first. Yes,
exactly. So for me, what I was asked one time whether I wanted to be rich or I wanted to be king. And when I asked that question, the path to richness, being rich, was outside investors, bringing in other money, lashing myself with really high expectations, and basically working for a board, right? That was the path to speed and richness, and being super wealthy. King for me was the path to do whatever the hell I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Right. And I always wanted to be king. I wanted to make money, but I didn't need to be a billionaire. I wanted to be able to live my life the way I wanted to live my life. And that required me being king, not focusing on being super rich. So when I say, what do you want out of your business? That is that critical juncture, because based on what your outcome is, it's going to set you on a path. I raised my boys when they were younger, even now. The most important thing I said to them when it comes to their choices in career and what they wanted to do was I didn't really care what they wanted to do, as long as what they wanted to do gave them the life they want to live. Because if it doesn't give them the life they want to live, then they shouldn't do it at all, right? They shouldn't go near it. They should avoid it like the plague. So reverse engineer your life, figure out what kind of life you want, and then build your business to support that. I think knowing that up front is clear. So for me, freedom is my number one core value, being king. Every business I've ever had, the very first thing I wanted to do was figure out how to fire me in the business.
Right. Do you know, right? I mentioned it in my podcast before, but we did a survey, and I actually wrote it also in an article to Inc. magazine. And I mentioned that we did a survey of entrepreneurs, and we asked them, what is the number one, like, what do you like most about being an entrepreneur? Or what do you like most about being a business owner? And like a majority, like probably 95% or some percentage like that, said freedom. I mean, freedom is what they enjoy most about being a business owner.
Mm-hmm. I think most of the conflict that people have is not being certain about what they want out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So once you're clear on it, then we can put our heads down and go attack that problem. But if we're attacking both problems, it's very hard. So for me, I wanted to scale, I wanted to grow, but I also wanted to be able to be the only dad at the co-op with my kids when they were little. Right. And I wanted to be the dad who could be at everything that my kids had going on, that I could possibly be at, even though much of it was interesting, because we had kids. But I loved it. I loved that opportunity. I wanted to be able to travel. I just never wanted to be a slave to my business. Because to me, that is the opposite of freedom. And I think sometimes we bind ourselves, or what we're comparing ourselves to is some incremental increase. So this is counterintuitive a little bit, but I look at it like, if I had another business and let's say it was wildly successful and it put another 7 figures a year in my pocket, would my life fundamentally change? And the truth of the matter is it probably wouldn't. Right. I make enough that I can do what I want now. So that's kind of my threshold, right? And keep growing and that sort of thing. So, but that doesn't mean I have to grow because my team has to grow. I have to have an opportunity. That's a challenge that we all have as entrepreneurs in the SMB space, is what is the career path for the people we have behind us? Are we the training plan for the next company? Or are we creating those opportunities where we get to take advantage of that skill and those trainings and that ability as they grow in their careers? So for me, that's probably the biggest motivation for me in trying to keep growing, is just make sure I'm providing better opportunities and more opportunities for my team, Right.
So I think the first thing you said is like identify your own purpose, then just do whatever you need to do that will actually enhance that purpose.
Yeah.
Also figure out like what are you doing for your team, right? I mean, think like, what's your purpose towards your team, and how do you want to build your business, for what reason for them? And that's what I'm hearing that you're saying.
Yeah, correct. But I'd say the biggest secret, though, to having freedom is hiring great people and empowering them.
Right.
So often I see, and I've been guilty of this as well, is just feeling like I have to make all the decisions. It's control. It's they can't do it, or they're not going to do it as well as I do, or whatever. And really kind of filtering through what all that means and figuring out what my particular value add to the business is, and then hire for all those other types of things, frees up a lot of time. Right.
So what was so let's take a look at, because, I see it all the time with entrepreneurs, it's the successful ones are doing exactly what you just said. The ones that have a really high paying job within their own business and are a slave to the business do not do that, because they have, they don't want to, for some reason, they don't want to delegate, or they're afraid that it's not going to get done as much as they want to, or there are different reasons, right? I mean, I can tell you, that's what we specialize in, documentation. And one of the key reasons why companies hire us is because the owner realizes that they can't wear all those hats, and they need to actually transfer those hats to others, but there is no playbook, there is no documentation, there is no how-tos. So I know that problem, I see it, right? What would you tell that entrepreneur that is actually, has trepidations, or is not certain that it will work? It's not going to get done as good as well as they do it. Or what if somebody doesn't do it correctly? Like, what would you say to that?
I would say, I get it. First, I mean, it's hard to build a business. It's hard. And as entrepreneurs, our employees, the people we put around us, are keeping our promises for us. So I find that a lot of those people are super, super high integrity, and they're super frightened by the notion or the idea that someone else could break their word. So I get it. All right. So starting there, I think what's helped for me is to really get clear on what our core values are, really focus on decision-making matrices that are around those core values, and then pushing decisions out. And to me, there's no bad decision if it's adhering to our core values. There's better, best, there's some other ways to frame that, but those are all coaching opportunities, because really what I want my team to do is represent my values to our customers, to each other, to our vendors. The values are the same regardless of the audience we're working to. So my particular role is to focus on the values, train against the values, and help build decision-making matrices for them to be able to ask the questions or take the challenge and run it through our core values. And then I empower them with a certain dollar amount to solve a problem, right? So if our lowest help desk person that starts a week ago can solve a $500 problem without ever talking to their boss. They don't need to talk to their boss. They don't need to talk to me. They don't talk to anybody. If the customer is complaining about something and it costs less than $500, just do it. Just do it. You're empowered to just do it. If you do it every time someone calls, we're going to have a coaching conversation. But the fact of the matter is that's not my decision. In the military, they use this idea of staff work, right? And the higher you are in the staff organization, the fewer decisions you should make, and the decisions you should be making are only those decisions that only you can make, right? So I think a lot of entrepreneurs need to understand what are the decisions that only you can make, and then you need to filter and put a layer between you and push those other decisions down. Otherwise, your time is going to get consumed by everybody else's emergency. And ultimately, our time is our most valued. It's the one thing we can't get more of.
Right.
So I think oftentimes the resistance is trying to figure out what decisions they should be rejecting. Right. It's like, that's not my decision. That's your decision. That's not my decision. What would you do? Right. That sounds good. Go do it. And you start to build that muscle in your team. And that's when the magic happens.
Absolutely. So you define your core values. First of all, you have to be very clear on it. You hire for your core values.
Yep.
You empower your team. You allow them to make decisions. You figure out, if you know that you have to actually allow them to make those decisions and own their own sphere of what they're doing.
Yep.
And stay away from it.
Yeah. I think I used to joke, because when I was first starting in the business, I had a lot of the domain knowledge. My employees didn't. So they would ask me every question, right? And basically, if I didn't know the answer, I would Google the answer. So I started calling it chuckling. So instead of Googling, you're chuckling, right? So if they would call me on something that they could get the answer somewhere else, I would just literally ask them, are you chuckling right now? Are you doing a chuckle? It became the joke in the business. Don't chuckle, chuck, right? Just Google it. Google the answer. And if you can't find the answer, if you can't solve this on your own, then bring it to someone else. But we need problem solvers. The world needs problem solvers. And I think we can be so prescriptive about the exact perfect solution that we think is the only solution that we force our employees to have to talk to someone else for fear of losing their job and doing something wrong. I would rather them do something wrong 1 out of 10 times and not have to deal with those other 9 things.
Right. So how do processes and procedures, we talked about a little bit before the podcast, like what's the importance in your opinion? Like, why should businesses have their processes documented? How does that align with this conversation?
Well, I think it aligns perfectly. So in the IT business, I'll give you an example. We have, I don't know, several hundred customers that all have very different environments. They're all complex. And if we don't have that well documented, every conversation for the customer is a new training conversation for our customer to try and train our team. Right. I think the worst thing that a business can do, and this is, I'll put my IT owner or my IT hat on if I'm talking to another business owner that's wondering about IT. The fact of the matter is people have we have this desire to build fiefdoms within organizations around our roles. And inside that fiefdom, the power is what's in our head, not what somebody else can have. Right. And as a business owner, everything that somebody does is my property, essentially, for the money I'm paying them for whatever that role is. And if it's only in their head, I don't own it. So for me, getting everything that somebody does every day, it should be able to be plug and play. This is why I love the franchise model. So I was a franchisor in the dating business, and we had to build a process and procedure for every single thing that was duplicatable in every single market we were around, right? McDonald's, you get a French fry in Seattle, Portland, Rome, it's the same French fry, right? It's a process and procedure that's documented. The IP of your business is what's in your process and your documentation. It's not what's in your head.
Right.
Somebody can't buy your head. And if you ever go to sell your business, if you don't want to have to work for somebody else for 3 years, then you should probably make sure that everything that's in your head is documented somewhere. So I think processes and procedures super important for IP. I think processes and procedures are super important for speed of problem solving for your teams. I think processes and procedures are
for consistency and setting expectations, right? I mean, if you are hiring somebody, then you want to make sure that they can be trained, right? So then you don't have to also spend your time in training. And then as they doing their jobs, they can have something to refer to. And there is accountability and predictability, because then it's very predictable what is needed from them.
Yeah, precisely. When I was in the military, one of the things that I learned the most and was most fascinated by was that you could take a combat vessel filled with people under 25 years old, drive it all the way around the planet and make war, and you had to be able to keep everybody fed, all their clothes laundered, the engines running, the lights on, the doors sealed, the weapons working, and every one of those things was a planned maintenance card that had a rhythm of when you had to do it and an instruction for what you did. And if you didn't follow those instructions, they called it gun decking, and you could be court-martialed for it.
Wow.
Like if you didn't get the right screwdriver, you could be court-martialed for it, right? It was serious business in the military because, and this came down to applying Vaseline to door seals. There was a card for it. It wasn't apply Vaseline to the door seals. It was apply this level of Vaseline all the way around, use this tool, use a rubber glove to apply. I mean, it was that detailed, but it allowed 18-year-old kids to be able to sit down and make sure that that vessel was combat ready 24/7 anywhere in the world, right? 100% process, 100%, right? So for me, that allows for you don't need as many artists when you have a lot of process. You need a lot of executors. Right. Artists are hard to find. A good artist is hard to find, but someone who can read is relatively easy to find.
To that point, I interviewed many creative people, and they kind of like some of them might look at it as they have some kind of processes are too restrictive, right? So to that point, there are processes that need to be done like to the card level on very specific procedures, 100%. So then you can use your time to create, to envision, to have fun, to execute what you want, what your purpose is, right? So those things that have a very specific step-by-step, absolutely, you need those cards and you need to do that. And then you can hire for your core values, but you hire people that share the same core values, but then they can be trained. And then there will be processes that might require more of the creativity. So you leave it to the creative part of that individual, but it still follows a process. And I interviewed many marketing agencies owners that you can say, okay, this is the creative field, but the successful ones, they have processes. They have a process on how to onboard a client, how to start a client, how to communicate to a client. Now, there's a process to build a website, etc., but it also allows for that creativity, and you hire the people that can create and they can express their creativity, but they have the freedom to express their creativity because you have all those steps in place.
Well, it's so funny you use the word marketing. So I've personally struggled with marketing companies a lot in my own business. But the ones that I love and the ones that I still pay have a process. And and when I know I'm in a process, I'm comfortable. I've hired marketing companies where they come in and their process is to read the latest marketing blog that came out 2 weeks ago and then try to implement it in my business as though they know what they're doing. That is not a process, right? There's no testing. It's like random act of marketing. So for me, I think there's a creative process, right? And the creative process could just be closing the doors and thinking without interruption. There's a process that's inside of that. I think I can't say I'm creative in certain ways, but I am certainly, my wife is an artist and she is so talented, and what she's able to envision and see and translate from a thought to a document or a paper or a painting or whatever she's doing it seems like magic to me, right? Wow. But the process that she uses is a series of questions to inspire connections, right? So sometimes it's just like, what are the questions you need to ask to inspire these new thoughts to come together? What are the influences you need to bring? So to me, those are all, I think a lot of creatives feel, I don't know, I actually can't speak for creatives, not being one, but my sense is when I work with them, they tend to be more of an artist, but if an artist running in a process it can unlock the world. An artist just floating has a hard time actually finding customers, finding an audience for their art, all that other stuff. So I was recently at a Comic-Con with my son this last weekend, and I was walking around, and at these things they have a lot of people who write books and do comic art, and the artists are actually in the booths, right? The people who write the authors and so on and so forth. And there was a vast difference between the authors who were super passionate about what they wrote and they're trying to bring me into their story, and the ones who were just sitting there waiting for someone to engage with them. And it was just the success difference. It was just such a contrast for me to see, where you can tell somebody has a clear picture of where they're going and what they're trying to do versus someone that's like made something really interesting or cool.
Charles, absolutely. And you know what? You probably are an artist, because I think that managing businesses and being an entrepreneur, it is an artistic form of, you are creating. You created 2 companies. You created 3. You created so many successful relationships in your dating business, right? You created franchises. Look at all these things that you are creating. So absolutely, there is creativity in everything that each and every one of us does. So that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. But Charles, if people want to find out more about you, about your companies, and want to ask you questions, what's the best way of contacting you?
I think LinkedIn is a really great way. Just look me up. It's Charles Bender. You can find my company website. It's attentus.tech. So attentus.tech. And skynetbb.com is my ISP. So Skynet Broadband is the name of that company. But really just reach out, connect me through here. I'll leave some contact information for you to share in the podcast. But listen, I just love helping people. I think the world is, it's a relatively simple place if we focus on trying to build meaningful connections with people and try to support each other. And for me, that starts with your family, your friends, and then your community. And I think having I'm blessed with EO to have such an amazing community of. And
EO is the Entrepreneurs Organizations for those of our.
Yep. Sorry. And it creates these great opportunities to meet people like you. So I'm super fascinated every day by the blessings I get over the people in my life. So thank you.
Wow, fantastic. Amen to that. And I feel very fortunate to have met you. So again, thank you to David for introducing us, and the stories that you tell today just totally resonates. I agree with you. So thank you very much for being a guest.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.